understand. Listen, and I've said it all along, and I think this is where Spurs fans, and when it comes to putting pressure on your ownership, have to be realistic. Is it more like, and this is about sort of not digging Spurs out, is it more likely that you keep buying players of the level that you have done for the past 20 years, or start to act more like a Man City, who you have a very similar revenue income to? I would say the likelihood is you continue to operate as you are. That's fine. Then what you need is a manager that gets the best out of that group of players. And I think there's this thing with managers, and it doesn't mean that what's the name of the Bournemouth manager? I forget his name.
Indoni Iraola.
Areola, yeah, Areola, that's the one. Areola, I'm not saying he's better than Pep, but there's an argument that he would do better with a kind of club that's mid to lower table level finances squad. He can get more out of that than, say, a Pep who's always used to having the very best around him. And that happens a lot in life. And sometimes you're able to work at that level. You work yourself up to a much higher level, and you would struggle even mentally to go back down once you've achieved certain things in life. It's natural and normal. And I think that is something Spurs fans, and that doesn't need an answer today, it's more of a thought from me, have got to kind of express them. It's the same as Michael. People say to me, Man United, you're mediocre as well. We are. The only time I'll accept us being mediocre is if we stop spending like the big teams and paying the wages like the big teams. Yeah. If, for instance, we were getting Rasmus Højlund's better example. If we bought Anthony for 15, 20 million and he was being paid 25 grand a week, I wouldn't be angry, because that's how he's performing. The problem is when you're paying someone like that £150,000 a week, I expect a lot more from them. And I think Spurs, you're almost in the middle of the two things. You're not quite spending enough of your money like the big boys, but equally your expectations are much higher than the Bournemouths and everybody else. I think you've got to pick a camp. You're sort of, Mr. Miyagi said this to Daniel's son in the Karate Kid 1. And I'm not going to do the accent, but he said, if you walk on the right side of the road, you're fine. If you
left side, you're fine.
If you walk on the left side, you're fine. If you walk in the middle, you're squashed like grape. And that's what Spurs are a little bit. You're walking in the middle of the road. You're not picking what you are. And I think that's almost breaks into that sort of space of no identity. As an overarching club, from your academy players, both male and female, right through to your first team, there should be an identity. And I don't necessarily think it matters what you pick, but you've got to have one.
I agree with you, Terry, and I think to a certain extent that's why they brought Postecoglou in. I described it as we were in no man's land. We didn't know our left from our right. So we brought in Postecoglou, who in theory is supposed to come in and take players that we don't know, take average players and improve them. You know, we brought in a Van de Ven for quite cheap. All of a sudden, we were waxing lyrical about Pape Sarr last season. But what's happened more, and I think this is the issue with Spurs fans, this is the issue that we're having, or at least this is the issue I'm having. I think Postecoglou could have been that guy, but his lack of wanting to adapt in the circumstance has ultimately killed him. And now he's run out of time and he's under pressure. Do you get what I'm saying? So for me, Areola would be a better manager, or a Marco Silva. That is the idea. But in him doing this high line for life, high line, get rich or die trying, he's now dying trying. And every loss that we make, despite the performance, is going to be...
You have to look at it this way, right? If somebody works right now for Sky Sports, and I don't know what they do, that they're a producer of live shows, and they're looking to leave, and I say, look, I need a producer. I'm about to go into a studio full time. I need a producer. I might be able to match similar to their salary, but what I'd have to make very clear in the beginning is you ain't going to have the budgets. You ain't going to have the same staffing numbers. As a producer, you're probably going to have to do a lot more work for me than you would working for Sky. You might have to do a bit of the editing yourself. You might have to do, there's loads of things you'll have to do which you didn't have to do when you were working at Sky due to by the way, West Ham could have sgored 3 goals in the opening 8 minutes.
I'm looking at it right now. They've had 3 decent.
They've had 3 really good chances. And this Man City team, honestly, they're going to go on to win today. They are shit. A better team is 3-0 up right now. It's crazy how bad they are. But the thing is I would have to be honest with that person in the beginning. Because if I tell them it's going to be like working at Sky and then suddenly they're getting all this work thrown on them they weren't expecting, they're going to do a bad job. They're going to say, this isn't what I signed up for. They need to be, and I think sometimes with Tottenham, and this is a defense of Big Ange, are you promising him more than you're actually delivering in reality. And then you're left with a manager who I think it's very obvious he needs a certain type of caliber with certain speed and a certain skill and technique, dependent upon the league he's in. And I just don't think Spurs are ever going to build a squad good enough for Ange to be consistent. And that's not a dig at your football. That's not. I'm not even trying to dig you out. I'm just trying to be real.
That's on Ange though, because Pochettino was given the same.
By the way, 1-0 City. Savinho just scored 1-0 City after those 3 chances to West Ham. It's 1-0 City.
That's what happens in football, man.
It.
You don't take your chances, you get screwed.
Yeah. I was going to say that you can't be a prime minister of a country or a president and then you get upset when people give you smoke. It's what comes with the territory of the job. Just like us being on the panel, if you get smoke in the chat, you can't get upset about it. It comes with the territory. That is football. Yeah. I look at the Brighton manager, I look at the Bournemouth manager, I look at Marco Silva. They are having to work with what they got. You can't tell me on the balance of probabilities that Fulham, man for man, has better players than Spurs. But they're a better team than Spurs because their manager is bringing out the best. And that's a manager's job. A manager's job is to bring the best out of the players that they have. Has Postecoglou done that this season? And when we talk about Tottenham not being able to rotate, well, I asked the question. Jed Spence has been a breath of fresh air since he's come on. I've been banging on about that for over a season now. So you could have rotated, actually. If you saw that Udogie was tired or Porro was tired, you've had Jed Spence training with you. Why didn't you bring him on? You said you were never going to bring in Reguilon. Well, Reguilon played today. We've talked about Austin. Austin, I've been banging on about him. What is the point of having an academy goalkeeper? And dare I say it, Austin looked more comfortable catching in the crosses.
Yeah,
it's fair
analysis.
There, you're not using it, mate.
No, it's a bit like when we've seen Pep before moan. Or my players are too tired, and then he only names 6 subs and he could have given an academy kid a chance. When they go 3-0 up, he could give an academy kid 20 minutes rather than running one of his players into the ground. You're absolutely right to challenge that. A super chat here from Jerome says Spurs is considered a top 6 club because we are the 6th in terms of trophies. 7th is Everton by 1 trophy. Yes, well, it's top 6 is a bit to do with trophies. It's also to do with money. It's more to do with the income and money. The top 6 clubs and the teams in that period were also in and around the top 4 in the Champions League.
It's actually not true, Terry. It's actually not true. They count the Charity Shield. I went and checked that. Someone fact checked.
You mean that they're not the 6th most successful club?
No, they are not, actually. They are not. There are about 3 clubs. Yeah, there are 3 clubs ahead of Spurs in terms of number of trophies that are like a FA Cup, Carabao Cup, League, or a European trophy. So that's not true. You can go and fact check it, guys. It's just that's not true, actually. Spurs are there because when the top 6 term created in the 2000s and the early 2010s, like last decade, Spurs were like finishing ahead of Arsenal, the Champions League, the Bales, the Modric, and all the stuff. And Spurs were put in that top 6 category because they were consistently making Champions League. But it's not before that.
No, it is. And I've got to say, like, I think Digital was making that point. I think, like, when Poch was, peak Poch years, I think the approach was actually exactly the same as it is now because we were always still buying young players. Like, if you think of Bale, if you think of Modric, if you think of all these players, Dele Alli, all of these players came in as promising youngsters, and then they actually became the superstars that they eventually end up being at Spurs while they were at Spurs. Some of them stayed longer than others. But at that point, we got such a great collection of, obviously, Harry Kane came through our own, academy, etc. We even like, what's his name? Ericsson. And, so like Poch actually, he accumulated a good bunch of these young players, promising players, and they all, they all came good at the end of the day. And we didn't necessarily have this level of injuries. I mean, we've had, like, if you remember, we'd get Kane injured for like half a season, we'd get Son injured, but I think for a long time, this is the this is like our worst run of injuries that we've had. I think,
but it's not about the injuries, Orchi. As Deji said, he has to adapt to the injuries he has. Like you cannot play the same way.
I agree, and that's the bit. That's the bit he's failing for me. As far as his philosophy, the way he plays, I like it. But what frustrates me about Ange, as I've been saying literally every show I've come on, is some of the choice of plays that he does, and I still don't understand how there cannot be any natural centre backs in our academy that is not worth a chance. You know, instead of playing Archie Gray, who is a midfielder naturally, why don't you give one or two? Surely they can't be as bad as Dragusin. Like Dragusin today, all right, he might have been ill or whatever, but you know, give some of the academy players a chance. Like you can, you know, if you've got players out injured, again, Reguilon today when he came on, like Reguilon in the last, you know, he's brought Reguilon in the last sort of month because he had to. He didn't have any other. He didn't have a choice. Well, you could have brought him in a lot more earlier in the season. You could have given him a chance. You know, I tell you what, I would much prefer Reguilon to play on left as a left midfielder, as a left winger, instead of Timo Werner. I think Reguilon would make a much better left winger than Timo Werner would as a backup to Sonny.
Can I just burst our bubble? Because this narrative that because of the injuries is the reason why we're losing. No, this form was the form that we got towards the end of last season. That form has followed us into this season. There is no... Remember, with our full-strength squad, we lost how much to Newcastle? 2-1. We lost to Brighton, being 2-0 up. There is no guarantee that even if these brothers were fit, under this manager, that we were going to have more points now.
Yeah, but
we were already...
AG, I want to tell you something. I think if it doesn't work with this manager, it might not work again. You tried every single manager, Deji. Might not. Well, when I mean work, I mean go to top 4 again, be a top club again, challenging.
Yeah.
It might not work, bro.
Yeah,
it might not
guys,
work.
I hear you on that. Just before the end of the show, a few super chats here. Aston Villa would be above if we include the championship. Speaking of Chelsea, have gone one up as well, by the way. Brilliant work from Jadon Sancho for that goal. Brilliant work. Newcastle versus Arsenal Cup semi will be a better 2 legs than most Champions League ties this season. Been a better game for the past 3 years. Yeah, it's going to be an amazing game. I actually agree. In terms of yourselves, you can see Chelsea are 1-0 up right now. You've got some players in really good form at the moment, the likes of Gordon and Isak. How are you feeling in terms of progression towards the Champions League position again this year, when you consider that it's highly likely top 5 gets it this year?
I think we need to do stuff in January. Need a right winger, need to buy a center back, although Botman coming back and do it. He's sketchy to start out, and for the goal, I think he should have done a bit better. Really good diving header, though, from Solanke. Not going to take away nothing from him on the goal, but Botman coming back is big. But we do need, I think, another center back. Just because, for depth reasons. And I think left back we're fine, right back we're fine. Midfield, pretty good. So really only a right winger this window would be my priority. I go get like a Johan Bakayoko from PSV all day, or Edin Jagrova from Lille. Maybe see if we could get him. I think that'd be great. But yeah, we definitely need to buy a right winger, and clearly a better backup striker, because Eddie Howe doesn't favor Osula. Because when we subbed off Isak, I was like, all right, we're subbing off Isak, but we put Joe Willock as the false 9. It wasn't really great, but yeah, I think we need to make some signings in January to really beef our squad up. But yeah, we're doing well. I just want to see when is our first loss or draw coming up, because it looks like we could go on a nice winning run here. But yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. Feeling pretty optimistic, even though we weren't at our best. And for the Arsenal game, just keep it under a 2-0. And I think we could go to our place and get probably a victory at home. So, but yeah, it'll be a really competitive 2-legged tie for Arsenal.
I hear you.
They can't score goals. They can't score goals without Saka. They're showing it against Brentford and what's it called? Brentford and Palace has scored 3 and 5, so we do have to be wary. But
it's going to be an interesting midweek. It really, I think. But I'm looking forward to both games are going to be entertaining, because every Spurs game is, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. They're amazing. Viewers.